You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News, the show that talks to newsmakers and other important people from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week we'll have a conversation about things that affect all of us. I live on Long Island just like you, and I want to know more about where my tax dollars are going, and I want to know more about the people making things happen around us every day. So this week, we're doing something a little different. I wanted to introduce you to a man and his business that I happen to have a personal relationship with, to put all of our cards on the table. But our guest is making things happen and trying to help out the people of Long Island by working with a bunch of different charities all the time. Now, my guest today is Mr. Beery, the owner of Mr. Beery's on Hempstead Turnpike in Bethpage.
This is pretty cool. I'm not privy to being in a radio station very often, so I'm having a blast already just being here.
Very cool.
They let me wear headphones, gang.
Well, all right. Let's start at the beginning. Where do you hail from originally?
I'm a Island Trees kid over there in Levittown. I guess we like to call it Upper Levittown if you're from Island Trees.
Okay, so you grew up on Long Island. You're a native.
Yeah. I was. I actually live on that border part where Bethpage and Levittown and Hicksville all meet.
Right.
But I went to Island Trees High School.
Wow. So I think back of those years, like when we were kids, we had it different growing up.
Absolutely.
Then, yeah.
I got a 30-year-old, and the difference is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
You watch how the kids that even in the bar business, watching how they come up and how different they behave compared to what we did back in the day.
Right,
back in the day.
Yeah.
You hate that term?
Yeah, but when I think about back in the day, I also think about what we got away with.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
No getting away with anything with a camera.
Not these days.
It makes a big difference on how you have to handle people in an environment that we work in,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so now tell me how Mr. Beery's came about.
Well, I was the bartender at the Peacock Lounge back then. I had bounced around doing a couple of different jobs. I was a bouncer, then I was a DJ, then I was a bartender. I finally ended up in a place called The Melody down the block where I started to learn my craft poorly. back in the early 80s, when it was like a free-for-all. The Club Med was the antidote for civilization. That's what we called it. It was a crazy, crazy place. But because of the times that it was alive in, that was all the bars out there were like that. Everyone was doing all kinds of weird stuff. And,
right.
If you had a club where the age was 18, that meant you had 16-year-old guys in there drinking. So there was always a melee going on.
Right.
So learning your craft in that environment was different. And I'm just old enough to watch the change. So I was 18 in 1978. By 82, when I was working in the bar, they had changed it from 18 to 19,
right.
And then 19 to 20. So it was a huge transition at that point in the history of the bar business. I went from there. I was bouncing around working in different places, and I ended up working in a place called the Peacock, which is what is now Mr. Beery's.
Okay.
And, I worked for some great guys and, guys that I would consider my mentors, Richie Lambert, Bobby McElroy, Jack Frost. They were all great guys that gave me the opportunity to become who I am now.
Right.
And without them, there would be no Mr. Beery. So they should get a little pat on the ass. Some of the things that they taught me were probably the things that I will never do too. Because we were in a, and again, you're in the 80s, whole different animal.
Right. So, well, even the music of the 80s.
Yep.
That added a lot to the atmosphere. Right.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? You got to remember this too. If you were a bartender in the 80s, like when you go to the jukebox right now, I can throw on anything from ska to funk to junk to punk to Lithuanian language records. It doesn't matter. I can get everything I want on the jukebox. Back in the early 80s, or even late up until probably like 90-something, you had a limited amount of songs. You had 200 songs in your jukebox.
Right.
Then CD jukeboxes came. I can remember saying, I go into the city one day, walking into a bar where they had a CD jukebox. And I was like, what's this? Holy cow, right. CD jukebox. Right. And I went back to tell Bobby, who owned the bar, I said, Bob, we got to get one of these. And the vendor said, we'll get you one, but we're not filling it up with CDs. So I had to take my CD collection and put it in the jukebox so we could have the things. They were going to spend the money on it. That's how weird it was. And then so now you went from having 200 songs to
whatever you had,
200 times an album. So you had, so they had 2,000 songs,
Yeah.
So it was a big transition. And then the jukeboxes that we got today came along, so you could get any music you want. So watching that, it's way more diverse. Like you got into a bar that used to go to your regular bar and you heard Run Around Sue 20 times a night, or now it's time for us to hear Raspberry Beret because that's what the vendor would change the albums according to what was on number one.
Yeah, so that's funny. That's one of the things I miss in diners these days. There used to be a little jukebox at everybody's table. You could listen to a tune or two. Yeah, that's history. Well, so you've seen a lot of changes just being in.
Yeah, well, I'm in that building on 4019 Hempstead Turnpike. So I put the cheap plug in there.
Yeah, people want to know.
Shameless self-promotion, guys. I put I got there in 1984. So I've been there. I'll be in that building 40 years this year. So
wow.
So I worked there, and then I became the owner of the place. So.
Well, and now that's the other thing. We talk a lot about, just bars and how they evolve and all that, but you've managed to stay alive in this because I think of some of the bar owners, and it's not a 9-to-5 business. You don't get to dress up in your nice suit and go and sit at a desk all day, and then when you're done at work, you could go out to dinner because you dress nicely and all. You're working.
Yeah, there's no way to tell what's going to happen over the course. You're dealing with people, and you're adding alcohol to them, so you never know what's going to go down. And most of the time, it's always fun and stuff. But a guy comes in and he was out someplace else, and he looks fine, and now he's a problem. These are kind of little nuances. Yeah. And my success or lack thereof, whatever you want to call it, at this point, 30 years of this, is solely predicated on the one thing that I consider myself good at, and that's finding good people. I have been blessed since day one of having some of the greatest crews, known to man. Like all of my bartenders, all of my music guys, all of the musicians, everybody that comes through that door is really professional and good. I mean, even when they weren't professional, they were fun to be around.
Yeah. Well, that, a lot of people consider, they refer to just as Beery's. Yeah. Hey, we're playing Beery's this weekend. It's home for a lot of people.
And that's a tribute to the guys that work there. They make it a family joint. And we always say to people when they come in, when new people come in, we always say to them, welcome home.
Right.
That's one of our little things. Hey, how you doing? Welcome home. Because you have made it back to where you belong when you get in there. Yep. And it's again, I can't be prouder of that fact. Of all the other things that go on with the place, the best compliment you can ever get is how comfortable the people that come there are.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
The 30 years of this stuff, most guys don't make it this long. So right now we've actually crossed the bridge into a whole new dimension.
Yeah. Well, you're in uncharted territory as far. But the real, let's just say you have a business, but you also make a big contribution to the neighborhood. There's a lot of bands that I talk to, and a lot of bands that I've met in your club that we sit down and talk about. Well, how did you do this and how did you do that? But so many of them got their first shot playing at Mr. Beery's.
Yeah, there's a bountiful harvest of guys who are up and comers that do well, and some of them don't make it. Some of them do. I mean, I don't even know some of the guys that have gone on beyond us, but I couldn't give you their names, off the top of my head. But when I see them on another bill, I'm like, oh, look at that. They played here in 1997.
Yeah, right.
And there's one of the things that the things I'm proud of at a place is the original music thing. To be able to do that, again, you need a crew of real special guys to make sure we can hold that stuff together. I got Mikey Longo now booking the bands. Tommy Drescher used to book them.
Yep.
I used to book them. So you go through cycles, and each guy has their own flavor of getting things. And Mike's been there probably 12, 15 years now.
Yeah.
So he's been there a long time, and without blowing smoke up his behind, see how I did that? I didn't. I was really proud of myself on that. But he's probably the best sound man on Long Island. And the good part about him is that if you ask him, he'll tell you that.
He's also one of the nicest guys on Long Island. He really is. I know Mike, and he's a great player.
Yeah,
he writes his own music.
Shame.
That's the thing, is some of these people are, they're writing songs, they're doing it, and yet they're very, very personable and normal guys.
And back on the Longo thing, if you've been there enough times, you've seen other sound guys. He trains all those guys too.
Yeah, right.
So he's trained all this. Like, there's nobody in there that comes through that isn't smitten with how the sound for their band is.
Yeah.
And again, without kissing my own butt,
it's something to be proud of. It is.
The sound in that room is probably the best on the island.
Yeah.
It really, I guess, because it's that typical Long Island tunnel bar. It's wood and there's nothing ricocheting around it. You go to some place it's just echoey and it's not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is the room always sounds great, and having Mike there to tweak everything, and the people that he trains to do that are unbelievable.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you too about you have some special events that happen, and the one I'm familiar with is the cystic fibrosis thing that you do. And to me, I would imagine planning for that is like the invasion of Normandy.
Yeah, it's well.
You have 50 or so bands that come through that club. Yeah. And there's the other thing, how the bands treat each other.
Yeah.
I mean, you're only getting 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because everybody and his uncle is playing today. So, and they come in, when they're done, they get off and they help the other players.
Again, this is the building. Don't think it was always like that.
No, I bet
okay,
not.
So building the community of people that we have and the musicians in the place, that's a huge part. They all cooperate. There's nobody bickering with each other. Everyone understands what we're doing and why we come. And this is the 26th one we're going to do. Yeah. So this isn't something we just learned how to do. And believe me, there was some broken eggs to make this omelet over the years. Yeah. And, we usually do it on February during President's Day weekend, which means that we are subject to snow, rain, cold. So we moved it to April because of the pandemic, and it just seems like more fruitful for us to try that. But now we run into that problem where all the bands are off on Sunday. Okay, so we're going to compete with what's going on, and there's some guys that just have to play there, and we want some new blood in there. But there's guys that have been doing it. It's Finally Balanced, for instance, right. All right, is going to be there 26 times. Now, you got some guys. I think that Jones Crush has been there like 23, and any incarnation of the guys from Kid and the Coots have been there 20 or so. There's a bunch of guys that have been there a lot of times.
Yeah, right.
But the only guy, Borgo Pass has been there a bunch of times. But the one band that has made every single one of these is Finally Balanced.
Wow.
And like that says a whole bunch. And the cooperation that goes on with all the bands that make this happen, it's like a machine now.
Yeah.
And
you see when, like on Facebook, you can see somebody mention, this is, and then you see all of the bands commenting, we're ready. Yeah. We're ready to go.
Nobody's missing that thing.
Yeah.
So the problem I'm having now, I don't know if you're a musician, and throw a cheap plug in there for Billy too. Bad Mary, they're coming in. When are you guys back over there?
I think April we're coming.
April, yeah. Terrific band. I know Bill probably doesn't get to talk about himself very often, but let me tell you something. This is an act worth seeing every time they're playing. The fact that there's 25 bands playing that night and they're all going to cooperate with each other and make sure that everything runs smooth, is only because we've been doing it for so long. Right. If you try to pull this one off, it's madness, And that's where I was going. The point that I was going to try to make was, you probably see it in your own playing out that late night has gone away. So this is where we got a problem right now, is that no one wants to play past midnight.
Right.
When I was in a band back in the 80s.
You started at midnight.
Midnight. I was still blow drying my hair at 11 o'clock. The band's getting there. What time's the band coming? And make sure you guys will lick it up. I'm going on at midnight. Would not even walk onto the stage before midnight. Yeah. And then play until 4 a.m. You have to get the hook and pull us off. Yeah. And you had to basically dynamite the group out of the bar. Right. No one was leaving. Mm-hmm. Somebody put up a post last week about things that you never said in the 80s. I want to go home. Right. You never said it.
Well, I think, it makes I think it's a business necessity now. People are realizing that older folks who go out for dinner at 4:30, right, or maybe 5 o'clock, right, they wouldn't mind seeing a show, but nobody's putting them on at 7 at night.
Right. So this is what we're always tweaking that part of it. Mike is really concerned with us putting the shows on early, and that's, and I'm concerned with trying to figure out how to get, the late night crowd again. If you're watching in real time, the pandemic threw everybody in our industry a huge beating, like brutal. Yeah. So you couldn't go on and expect things to be the same. No. But you lost a bunch of guys that were from 21 to 23 that were no longer going out, which sounds like a 3-year spread. It's really a 5-year spread. Because now the guys that are 21 are now coming back, and you can see it in real time. Like they're working the restaurant jobs, so they're coming back out a little later, and the late nights are starting to kind of blossom a little bit. But it was torture. The day guys, all the day guys. This is one of those things that if you're into, and I want every bar owner out there to comment on this and make fun of me about this, but I've watched in real time medicine kill my industry. Guys that are our age would come into the bar. Nobody takes medicine. Back there, 25 years ago, nobody took medicine. Right. Nobody took any medicine. You got, you went to the bar.
Everybody's taking a pill now. Yeah.
And, had some drinks, make you feel better, go home. Right. I was the medicine man. Right. I took care of giving you your medicine. Now you get a guy that comes in the bar who's 62 years old, doing Coumadin, has a half a Budweiser Light, and he doesn't know what he's doing anymore. Right. So you can't mix alcohol with maintenance medicines. It just doesn't work. And so that's another thing. We've watched a whole culture switch for guys that would never, ever take any medicine. I'm not going. How come you're not sick? Because I never go to the doctor. That was part of the dynamic.
I'm still on that team. Yeah. But just for a quick to remind the listening audience, you're listening to this week's Long Island News on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and my guest today is Mr. Steve Beery of Mr. Beery's on Hempstead Turnpike in Bethpage. It's funny because for years I thought that the name of the bar was just a way to broadcast, by the way, we have beer kind of thing. And until I met you and said, oh, man.
Your destiny.
Yeah, that I think you were born to own a bar. I wanted to talk to more about the cystic fibrosis thing. Okay. You give them quite a lot of money every year.
Well, sometimes it's a sliding scale about, what we give them depending on, what happens. Yeah. Last year was a bad one.
That makes sense.
But that's okay. This year will be a good one.
Right.
And over the years, the foundation is doing really well. Okay, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, they've located the gene that causes it. They've got billions of dollars. Now, when we first started this, they had nothing.
They don't have. Yeah.
And we were trying to breed awareness. Our real goal in this thing was just telling people that there was a disease called cystic fibrosis.
Such a thing, right?
So it wasn't, the money was just a bonus. The fact that we were getting the word out was was cool. And this has morphed into something that has.
Where did it originate? What?
All right, so I'm at the. We had a group that was down in Kentucky, rolled their van. So we did a fundraiser because they were friends of ours. We did a fundraiser for them, and we did it on that weekend. Okay,
Right.
And so we got a couple of bucks for them and nothing crazy, but it was successful. It's our first time we ever did a fundraiser.
Right.
A girl that the quarterback from our football team was dating or married to the curator of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
Organization. Or, yeah.
So she says to me, you guys do pretty good at this stuff. Would you do one for us? I said, sure, why not? So we did it, and that one was pretty successful. So we decided to do it a second time. So year 2 of the cystic fibrosis thing, I got this thing going on, and one of the girls from our neighborhood comes over to me, and she's got a 2-year-old that has cystic fibrosis. And she says to me, why do you do this? I said, I don't know. And she kind of just, had that wiggly chin thing and just went, thank you. And it got me right in, all right, we'll do this. We'll see this one through.
Right in the feels.
Yeah. And now, like I said, there's plenty of money there. Her daughter's now 30. Mm-hmm. Okay, before we started this, you didn't live till 30 with this disease. And they fix things, and people get lung transplants now. And, in our 30 years, like we are going to, with any luck, be able to not do this fundraiser soon because it'll be over, because they will make this polio or make this the common cold,
right? Which
is really a great thing to be a part of. But watching it in real time was what we started at and what it does now. Yeah. And now it's more of a music festival.
Well, I've played it a couple of times with different bands.
Yeah.
I mean, Bad Mary did it. I did it with the Roosters. I mean, we were only playing cover tunes, but those guys were thrilled to be able to get out and just do 20 minutes in front of people that we never saw before.
Right.
The thing... There's a couple of things I thought were funny. Almost everything in the place seems to be for sale that day.
Yeah.
If somebody's looking at a lamp on the wall, I've heard you say, well, it's yours if you give me a good price for it. And then, the other thing was, and I don't know if it's a rumor but I think it's probably true, the profit that you got from selling beer, you would throw into the kitty.
Well, on some of the things, we don't want to. When we're doing those things where you hear us go, like, there's no glassware in the bar during that day. So if I sell a glass to you, right, I'll say, okay, you want a glass? Come over here and get one. Give me $5. We'll send you back to the bar, and you fill it with beer right now.
Right.
And you can have a glass for the rest of the day. That goes into the kitty. That's the stuff.
Well, it's like there was the one thing about the tattoo. Like for $25, I think it was, or whatever that it went.
You got a tattoo.
You got a tattoo, but your first beer was free for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a few years back. I don't know what kind of legal problems we'd run into doing that again.
Yeah, right.
But again, this is 30 years.
Yeah, right.
Things that we did before we can't do again.
Listen, I think of all the drink specials they used to have. Ladies drink free and all that. None of that stuff's legal now.
No. And so you got to be real careful with it. Like we did. Yeah. Like the one year, like some of the things we've done in there that are kind of memorable weirdness. One day we had and again, some of it's so politically incorrect that we couldn't. Because 30 years is 30 years. So if we even talk about this, somebody goes, "Oh, you did what?"
Yeah, right.
But there was one year we raffled off a bottle of French. The French wouldn't let us fly over their territory in Libya. Or something.
We started calling them freedom fries.
Right. So we took a bottle of French wine and raffled it off at the event so someone could open it and pour it in the urinal. So there was guys over there bidding, like auctioning this bottle of wine.
You know what? That's a healthy protest. Right. Nobody's getting hurt. Nobody's
During this was one that like some of the things that you do, like I'll never do them again.
Right.
And not because of political incorrect, because of the danger of them. We had a piñata one year that was a monkey. Okay, it was from Kahlua or something. There's a million artists in that place, so we had somebody turn the monkey into Osama bin Laden. So we got this piñata, Osama bin Laden piñata, and I got it on a stick. I'm winging it around the bar from the stage, and people are putting on blindfolds and swinging a stick at the pinata that I'm lifting out.
Great.
And I was like, okay. Finally, he just threw it on the floor and kicked it because I could never really get hit with his stick.
I didn't think this one through.
This was probably a bad idea. But, like those are the kind of things. So we've done all kinds of weird stuff. And depending on what's happening that year. One year we had, in the middle of the event, we got this great event going on. Everything's cranking. And at that time, NASCAR was gigantic, like really gigantic. So we would have to cut into the Daytona 500, while we're doing this thing. So guys, we watching the TV, listening to music. Dale Earnhardt gets killed, and it was like Elvis getting killed. It was like the whole room, the energy got sucked out. And I'm not really a NASCAR fan. I had no idea how big a deal this guy was until that moment. I was like, holy cow. Yeah. And we got back on track. But these are some of the things that happened during the course of this this event.
We should do a podcast sometime, maybe down at your place. One little secret I wanted to give out to the bands. Have you spoken to any other bands about your secret spot in your club where you go and listen to music to see if...
Yeah, the Unforgiving Basement.
Yeah.
I go down there and I do my paperwork and I listen to what's going on. And if you stink, I know.
You know.
Okay, because everything gets filled. But if you're great, I know it too. Because everything that's up there, all the noise and banter and TVs and stuff that you're doing wrong gets filtered out from... So I'm all the way in the back. I'm all the way down by like the front door in the basement. So I'll hear every single note that comes through there perfectly and know exactly who's doing what.
Well, I'm going to hold you to it. I want to experience that some night. I want to go down and hear that perfect spot. It's like going to a loud club. If you put earplugs in your ears, it brings everything down, but it makes everything much clearer.
You ain't kidding.
Yeah. So anyway, I can't thank you enough. It's half an hour is not long enough to...
not for me to get my last plug in. St. Patrick's Day is coming up next week.
That's right.
We're going to be doing kegs and eggs. We're going to be doing corned beef and cabbage in the afternoon. We're going to be doing the ska. The Crisis Crayons will be there at night. Saturday is the anniversary party, so it's like a 3-day binge. So if you've got nothing going on,
excellent.
We're going to be doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the whole weekend.
One of the people that I met at your place that I want to give a shout out to is Dan Sweeney. All the times that I've ever been in Mr. Beery, I've never seen a fight there.
No.
I've never seen.
No.
And Dan's a good reason for that. Very imposing figure, but the nicest guy you ever want to meet.
He'll be working, so we can be clear. Danny will be there on St. Patrick's Day. And he had a car accident where he was pretty messed up for a while. So he's been on the shelf for a little while, but now he's back at full strength. He's still the best guy out there, and he'll be on.
Well, my guest today has been Mr. Beery, Mr. Steve Beery of Mr. Beery's on Hempstead Turnpike in Bethpage. Again, thanks for taking the time to be here and speak with us today. But the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to get on out of here. I'm Bill McIntyre. Remember, you can listen to us by searching for this week's Long Island News wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're right here on the radio every Friday at 3 p.m. on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC.